Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Today's video is going to be a book review, and it's a book review of one of the books that are longlisted for the Booker Prize this year. So I contacted the publishers Little Brown and they very kindly sent me a copy of this book. This is an Orchestra of Minorities by Chigozie Obiama, and as I said, it's longlisted for the Booker Prize this year. I want to make 2 points about this book before I get into the plot. First up is that this is a contemporary twist on Homer's Odyssey in the mythic style of Igbo cosmology, which is, in South Nigeria, it's kind of their religious beliefs and cultural beliefs they call Igbo cosmology. So I just want to say that first, but you don't need to know about those two subjects in depth before you read this book at all, because I actually didn't know that either. And in the front of the book, it has things to do with Igbo cosmology. It has charts and things to do with their religion here that you can kind of reference to if you want in the book. So the plot of this book is it's set in Nigeria, and it's about a man who is a poultry farmer. He doesn't have any parents and he has this deep sadness within him. He's driving past a bridge one day and he sees that a woman is about to jump off the bridge and commit suicide. He then stops his van and he's just bought two great birds that he really was looking forward to buying, and he throws them over the bridge and says to her, look, you can't kill yourself, let me show you how much damage you would do to yourself. So he sacrifices his own birds, who he really cares about, to stop this woman who he doesn't know from committing suicide. So he does this and then he drives away. They don't exchange numbers or anything. Their paths later on meet, and it's about their relationship. She's from a very wealthy family and they do not want the relationship to go any further with the two of them, and then he decides that he is going to go to university in Cyprus because his friend says to him, I can help you get there, and he really wants to better himself to prove to her parents that he can be worthy of being with her. And she is going to be a chemist and she's very educated, and they just look down at him and this uneducated poultry farmer. They're like, no, she's going to be too good for you and she is a chemist. And so he then goes to Cyprus and it goes terribly wrong, and that's all I'm going to say. And it's really about scamming and deceit, and it just gets devastating, completely devastating. The whole book is told from a spirit that lives inside our main character. So the spirit lives inside of him, but it's not his spirit, it's not his soul. The idea is that we all have spirits living within us. It's to do with Igbo cosmology, as I said. So we have spirits living in us. They can put thoughts in our minds, but we still have free will. So they can say to us, what you're doing is terrible, I can see danger coming, this is going to be awful, but we can ignore them because they don't control us. And these spirits live in loads of different people over time. So when we die, they go into someone else's body and they live on like that. So that spirit that lives inside of him is narrating us the tale, and there's a lot of dread throughout it. This was so interesting, this book, because there's this spirit, and I loved the bit when spirit can go outside of his body. So sometimes spirit goes outside of his body and can see other spirits and see what they're doing. So when he's talking to someone, the spirit can go outside and look at the person who's talking to's spirit. Is it a good spirit? Is it a bad spirit? Talk to the spirit about their person, who they call the host, because it's you're hosting the spirit, the host body. Talk to them, what is this person's real intentions? Are they going to hurt my host or not? I thought this was just fascinating. The whole thing was, the way it was laid out was so fascinating. The writing was beautiful, it was so rich. And at the beginning of each chapter, it was really about the spirit telling you lessons about life. So men and revenge, men and deceit, men with pain, and all these different themes, and what it means for us to be humans, and how we all have fear and we all have anxiety, which anxiety is anxiety of fear because we can't predict the future. And the spirit is saying if as humans we could predict the future and we knew what was going to happen, what the outcome of our conversations and actions were going to be, then we wouldn't have anxiety, we wouldn't have this fear, because we would know if it was going to be good or bad. But that's our biggest downfall, is that we don't have that, and then terrible situations happen and there's nothing we can do about it. Because if people have bad intent towards you and they're going to do bad things to you, it was devastating in that as well. But I know myself, it wasn't a shock to me. I know if someone has bad intent and wants to do something bad to you, they'll do it, and you are completely powerless to stop them. And that's the reality of being a human being. And then you have to somehow just carry on with your life after that and push aside all the stuff about revenge and vengeance and just get on with your life. and I loved all the stuff about like vengeance and like hatred is poison to your heart. It can't really live inside your heart because it takes over your whole body. There were so many different things I could talk about. This is over 500 pages, so this is a beast. Like, look at it. This is an actual beast of a book. I can't remember the last time I read a book over 500 pages. I don't tend to read massive books like this, but I really flew through it because I wanted to know what happened to him. I was so invested into what was going to happen to him. So the book is part love story. He's saved this woman's life, they reconnect, and it's about their growing romance, and they are very much in love with each other. And then it turns into a bit of a Romeo and Juliet. So her family doesn't want him to be with her, and she's kind of kept away, and she's not allowed to be with him, and then he decides to do something very dramatic to educate himself so that he will be a good prospect for her in her family's eyes, and then it goes terribly wrong. So you have this dread and fear because the spirit is telling you that the spirit is recounting this whole story to someone else who you think of as kind of like a higher god. So the spirit is telling God that my host did this and that, but don't judge him too harshly, and he did this, but he's not a bad man. And so you know something terrible is going to happen throughout the book, and it's so weird to have this like blossoming love, and you're like, oh my god, I really want them to be together, and at the same time it's a really bitter like taste in your mouth because you know it's all going to go terribly wrong. It's such an interesting combination. I feel like it was so well written to juggle those two things at the same time that it made me feel so uneasy throughout the whole entire book. I thought this was a great book. I thought it was a really good book. I don't really feel like I have any criticism on the book. I would say that our main character really is the only character in it. There wasn't any other memorable characters within it. It was just him. So it's not memorable female characters, it's not memorable male characters, it's just, it all is revolving around him because his spirit is living inside of him. So he's really the only character we find any real information about. I thought it was good. I thought it was a good, solid read. I would recommend it. I thought it was really interesting. I thought things to do with human nature were really interesting within it. I thought when it went drastically wrong, that was dealt with really well, because you have the action, which I don't want to spoil it, but you have an action, so something happens to him, and then it's about his psyche and how your psyche kind of can unravel yourself, and then you're just in this madness. And the spirit who's living inside of him, the host, there's nothing the spirit can do. So the spirit's telling you, I knew he was going into madness, and then he'd get himself better, and then there was still this vengeance in his heart, and I could see that it was poisoning his whole body. He just couldn't get rid of it. I thought this was really good. Really great. Like, great that it's on the Booker Prize long list. I expect to see it's on the Booker Prize shortlist. Let me tell you that right now, because I think this is a good, solid book. It's interesting. It got me really interested as well about Igbo cosmology. Like, that's something that I'm going to look up now. That actually made me think that's a really interesting concept. The spirits living within you and everything to do with it. So I thought this was great. Solid, great book. I would recommend it. That is the end of my review. Thank you very much, Little Brown, for sending me this book. I actually really loved reading it. Thank you very much, and I will see you guys soon for another video.